In fact, I agreed with everything that Mark wanted to do. And it's because I truly believe this with all my heart. I don't care what people think, honestly. I'm telling you, this is the truth. I believe in the next generation.
Yeah.
I believe my primary role is not to be the guy. My primary role, since day one, by the way. This is why we have a dream team. This is why we have small group leaders. This is why we train church planters. I've been trying to give away ministry to other leaders my whole ministry life.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the GrowLeader podcast, where we grow leaders that grow churches by helping them reach their full potential. My name is Matt. So glad you are with us today, sitting right beside my pastor.
A pastor?
My pastor.
Yes, I am.
We'll talk more about that in just a second.
Yes.
Pastor Chris
My
Hodges.
founding pastor.
That's right. You're my founding pastor. That's right. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Actually, I'm doing really, really well. And we just had a great regional in Miami, and man, it's been a great month. And I'm excited to talk about this topic today, because some interesting things happened, and we found out that people have a lot of different opinions about it and questions about it. And I was listening, Matt, to someone talk about what makes podcasts successful. And one of the successes of podcasts, the ones who have like millions of followers, is that they satisfy curiosity. And there's obviously a lot of curiosity around what I did on the first Sunday of February. So we're going to hopefully satisfy some curiosity today.
I'm excited about it. And if you have not seen what happened at the beginning of February, we're going to link the message here in the show notes so you can watch it and see how it's done. But give us a life update. And for those that don't know and aren't aware of what happened a few weeks ago, tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I think for a lot of people, it did feel like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't see this coming. For years, I've been dripping out information that there would be a transition at some point. I have said very openly that, even to the church, that I love all that I get to do in the body of Christ, but I'm very, very fond of my role in Highlands College. And honestly, I wake up every day thinking about what I need to do for the school, and was spending about 80% of my time probably on the church side of my life and 20% on the other things, mostly Highlands College, but Grow and other things as well. And I really needed that to flip. And I've been thinking this for a long time. In fact, I'm a journaler, and every day I, just write it's like 5 sentences. It's called the 10-year journal, and I write out like 5 sentences. And what it does is when you go to a date, you get to see what you wrote on that date. So this morning, I think it's a 10-year journal, but I'm in the 7th year of my journals. So when I wrote in it today, I could see what I was thinking on this day 7 years back. And man, it was 4 or 5 years ago. It was well before COVID. That I was already thinking about this, that, I was losing, not love. I got to be careful because, man, I love our church. I just absolutely love our church, and I love being a pastor. And I don't think you can ever take that out of a person. But my vision, maybe that's the best way to say it, my vision and my dreams were always in this area of leadership development.
Right.
That's why I love Grow. That's why I love Highlands College. I wake up every day thinking about how to develop another leader, not starting another campus or another series. And so I did all of that. But I was looking back in this journal, and I was having these thoughts on Saturday nights saying, man, I wish I had more fire and more enthusiasm. And then I'd get on the stage on Sundays and I would preach, and honestly, I felt like, wow, I don't want to be any other place than the church. So in those moments, so still deeply loved it. But it was probably about 2.5 years ago that Mark Pettus came into my office. And if people don't know who Mark Pettus is, he built Highlands College. I wasn't clearly the visionary, but I gave him the task. I never went to an architect meeting. He went to all of them. I saw some of the things in this beautiful building for the first time myself, just after giving the vision, because I can empower some leaders, and I don't have to be in every meeting. But Mark built this thing, went through the whole accreditation process for 7-8 years. He literally built the school as our president, and of course he built the Motion Conference, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, student conference in the nation. He's a builder in his own right. But he came into my office and he said, man, I really love Highlands College, but I wake up every day thinking about the church. And it kind of startled me. And I said, well, Mark, that's interesting, because I really love the church, but I wake up every day thinking about what I can do at the college. And that's when we decided to go on a journey, not knowing how long it would take, too, Matt, let's just start working on this. Let's start playing out what would it look like if we were to actually transition roles.
Yeah.
That, again, and the way I say it is that still in the family, just with a different role. Still in the family. This is a missional family. This is if you will, an ecosystem of a lot of things. I mean, ARC's involved in that ecosystem. There's a lot of things in this little ministry ecosystem. So still in this ministry missional family, but just with a different role. And on the first Sunday of February, which was our 24th anniversary, I like to think of it this way: it was the beginning of our 25th year
Right.
as a church, the church that I founded. By the grace of the Holy Spirit and the help of a lot of wonderful people, am the founding pastor of this church. That I would transition from lead pastor to founding pastor, and so I can give that 80% to the school. So that's what happened.
Well, over 2.5 years, you've been very open with the staff, as much as we were able to hear at the moment, especially with campus pastors, even how Mark's been leading. And so internally, I think, when it happened.
Well, what people don't know is that for the past year, I went to 8 meetings. Mark went to all 50-something meetings of the lead team because I was letting him lead. I was letting him test drive before he got his license, so to speak. And same thing with campus pastors. And it was actually pretty painful for me because I love leading, but I knew I needed to let him have some reps before all of this got put on him. Same thing with me, by the way. He was pulling me into more Highlands College meetings because I had a lot to learn about academics, about our accreditation process, about some of the more, the legal side of this thing. And so we started a lot earlier than people even knew that we knew it was coming. We didn't really even know the date until about 3 months before when we started bringing the elders involved, and they were involving in that. But what's so funny to me, and maybe you can answer this question, Matt, is that people, I went to the Alabama basketball game a couple of nights ago. I have a friend who has courtside seats, and I go to one game a year for Auburn and one game a year for Alabama, just to be nice, Both coaches go to our church anyway. I'm an LSU fan, of course, but I go to these games. I had 10 people come up to me and say, "How are you enjoying retirement?" And I'm like, "Bro, I ain't retired. I'm refired. If anything, I'm putting my energies in another direction." And I don't even know where that comes from because our own paper here in town did report it very accurately about the transition of roles. That, in fact, truth be known, I'm working harder than I've ever worked before in my life. I mean, the day after we made that announcement, I was in California in front of 300 very high net worth people who wanted to hear about our school. Since then, I've already done another fundraiser for our school that's produced several $1 million of donations to the school. And what's so cool about it, Matt, too, is I don't work for the school. I've never taken a penny from the school. Never will, by the way.
Love it.
And Tammy and I personally are givers to Highlands College after we tithe to Church of the Highlands. So I don't know. It's kind of funny to me how. Well, I don't know if it's funny or flattering. I don't know what it is, but people are very interested and have come up with a lot of things that just simply aren't what's going on. It's almost like they can't accept that what I said was actually the truth. But what I said on that date, on February 2nd, there's nothing more to the story.
Well, let me just, as an eyewitness account, let me say, if this is retirement, you're so bad at it. You're not retired.
Yeah,
at
exactly.
all.
Well, we were just in Miami teaching 500 pastors, so you came with me on that trip. So no, we're getting after it.
The church's response, I think, for people that are plugged in and were involved in small groups, and they attend a lot. It wasn't a surprise. You've done a great job.
The timing probably was,
a little
but
bit.
not that it was going to happen.
And so the general feeling around Church of the Highlands, everybody's wondering, is people are excited. I think
Yeah.
it's because we get the best of both worlds.
Well,
now.
the truth be known is I was telling somebody this morning that if I wasn't secure, I'd be insulted of how well people have received it. My goodness, I mean, it's like, wait, I mean, miss me a little bit, why don't you? You know what I'm saying? So anyway, and then I'm still very involved in the church, as well. I'm preaching a third of the Sundays this year, so I mean that's still a lot. I'm preaching this coming Sunday,
Right.
So it's. I don't know. Why do you think it is? Why are people creating another narrative other than what I said on that Sunday?
Well, I think anytime somebody has blanks in a story, they'll create their own. So
do you think there were blanks there?
Not for most people that are involved. I think it's more for the outside person looking in. But I also think it's because they don't see healthy transition that often. We hardly ever see it. There's usually something else going on. I grew up in a church where when in a certain denomination, when there was any kind of transition, there was this smoke screen from the pulpit where one thing was said, but we all knew, man, it's really something else. Like something else is
Yeah.
going on. And I think that's new for people to see a healthy transition where the leader that's taking to a next step and the leader that's stepping in both really love each other and really are
Yeah.
on the same page, really passionate about the same things is so rare in the body of Christ. And that's sad. And hopefully, I know you think this, hopefully because of how you've walked through this, it'll help some other people walk through
Oh,
it.
I want to. One of the things that while we were going through this 2.5 year process, which I'll explain even more of the details of that in a second, because I learned a ton. I was taking notes the whole time, knowing that I might get the chance to help, be a part of other churches' transition processes. And I hope to be called in. I mean, if any are interested in me being involved, I would love it, because I actually brought someone in. I'm not going to name who it is, but I brought someone in, an outside kind of third party person who was incredibly brilliant and had been on the receiving end of a transition
Wow.
from a founding ministry that is very, very successful and one that we support. And he's so stinking smart anyway, but he just knew. In fact, he got involved in conversations with Mark and me and just made sure we were asking the right questions. And like he said, Mark, why don't you bring a proposal of everything you'll change when you become pastor? And this was a year ago that Mark came to me with, like, I love what we do, but this is what I would do differently.
Wow.
And it's kind of, that's like, really, I think we're doing pretty good now, and but it was healthy conversation. And in fact, I agreed with everything that Mark wanted to do. And it's because I truly believe this with all my heart. I don't care what people think, honestly. I'm telling you, this is the truth. I believe in the next generation.
Yep.
I believe my primary role is not to be the guy. My primary role, since day one, by the way, this is why we have a dream team. This is why we have small group leaders. This is why we train church planters. I mean, I've been trying to give away ministry to other leaders my whole ministry life. And I believe in it. And I think this church would be run better by someone who has kids in their home still, that is raising a family in their home, and that it understands the dynamics of a culture today, which I honestly don't really get that much. And anyway, he brought all these vision. They really weren't vision changes. They were just things I would do differently, and they were spectacular. And we had to talk through a few of them. And then he asked us questions like, this third-party person who helped us said, what do you want PC's role to be? But that was an interesting conversation we had. Like, how involved do you want me to be? Because I really actually still want to be involved. I want to be the grandfather in the house, just like I want to be that role in my family. And I think I am in my family. My kids, my granddaughter was over this morning. So we still have a role in the family. Now, Tammy is no longer having kids.
Right.
To God be the glory. And Lord willing, she'll never get pregnant again, right? But we still have a family. We're still vibrant places in the family. And again, that analogy best describes how I feel. I'm almost like I don't want to have kids anymore. And I say that respectfully. I mean,
Sure.
But I know it's not for us to produce the children. We're supposed to play this grandparent role. And that's how I feel in many ways in the body of Christ. And so Mark had to answer that question and say, well, the role he wants me to play. We had conversations of who stays on the board. Because in our bylaws, the senior pastor is the non-voting chairman of the board of trustees.
Right.
So I'm no longer on the board. In fact, I had a friend. This is a funny story, Matt. I had a friend who really, in the nicest of ways, was skeptical of whether we really did it. And he calls me and he said, I have 2 questions. He's one of those friends. I got 2 questions for you. I said, all right, ask your questions. He goes, are you still on the board? And I said, no. I said, I actually can't be, because the bylaws say that the senior pastor or the lead pastor is the non-voting chairman of the board. So I have no board seat. I have no power in that regard. And he goes, and he just paused. He was almost taken aback by it, because a lot of times there are transitions.
Right.
Well, they want the new guy to preach every Sunday, but they still want to have power on the board. And I've given all of that, every bit of that away. And then he said, well, do you have any power or control over the checkbook and the finances? I said, 0. He goes, oh my God, you really did this. And we really did. I mean, I don't know why, but I know that people are trying to come up with another narrative or another reason why, but it's just not the case. It is. I truly believe in this next generation, and honestly, I truly have a lot I want to do over here at this school. I wake up every day with fresh vision for the college, and I'm excited about it.
So what is the role of a founding pastor look like? What's the dream that you have or the vision that you have for that role?
Well,
as
I
a
don't,
founding pastor?
someone else came up with that term. Since I was the founding
Sure.
pastor, Tammy and I started the church 24 years ago. I think the role is just I'll serve at the pleasure of our pastor. That's what I think it means. I think there are other cases of it. You see people like we call him Coach Tom Mullins, who
Yep.
handed Christ Fellowship over to his son, and I think he speaks like 12 times a year. I don't even have a goal of how many times I want to speak, but I want to be there. And if Mark needs me to, especially in the role of sharing vision or telling the old stories, I think like when we're in these not fundraising is not the right word, but when we're in our legacy environments where
Sure.
we're talking about some of our vision projects, I can imagine Mark would want me to come in and retell the story of how the church started and our values and things like that. So I think just like a grandparent does.
Yep.
My favorite part of my grandparents is they told stories. I loved sitting on the couch with my grandparents and like, tell me stories about when my dad was a little boy, and I think that's a role of a founding pastor is to kind of obviously support the new lead pastor, but tell the stories. Be the old cute guy. Walk through the hallways, hug people, love people. I know I'm only 61, and that sounds weird to say an old person, but I've been doing this a long time, and it's time for somebody else to do
Yeah,
it.
you made a comment when on the anniversary Sunday. You said, "Hey, if you love me as your senior pastor, you're going to love me as your founding
No, I
pastor."
said if you've loved me as a father
That's
in this
right.
house,
Yeah, yeah.
you're gonna really love me as a grandfather. And I was a good dad, I think. My kids are serving God, right? The story hadn't been perfect, but I think I was a pretty good dad.
Yeah.
I'm a really good grandfather. And the difference is you're older, wiser, you're not as desperate as you were in your 20s. You're definitely not as broke as you were in your 20s. And there's a role that I'm able to play in my family right now where I can give more to them resources wise.
Mhm.
I can, a lot of times I take the family on trips because they're trying to pay for daycare and
Sure.
school and all. They don't have the money to go on a great trip, and so that's something that Tammy and I can bless them with. And I see my role in the same way in the church in that way. So
So let's help some people because I'm thinking, first of all, every one of us, regardless of what we lead, we're sitting in somebody else's seat. At some point, transition's
that's
coming.
good. Yeah.
So how do you prepare for that? Even what did you do to prepare? How did you know when it was time to start praying about transition? Maybe there's somebody out there now that's thinking, man, is my time coming up soon? Let's prepare some people.
First of all, you can't imagine the number of pastors that if I named their names, people would know them, and I'm not going to say their names. But one of them called me and said, "Well, you put us all on the clock." Like, well, no, not really. Everybody needs to follow God and do that in their own time. I knew this 20 years ago. I know that's going to sound cliche and not true, but I was thinking about this 20 years ago. People say, "How long did it take to develop Mark?" 20 years. He's been on staff for 20 something years. I started with 20 years ago thinking one day there will be a transition of roles. I'm never going to retire, by the way. I don't have a retirement mindset. I'm going to work as long as God gives me
That's
breath,
great.
and I will always find something to do. I still am very energetic about the school, very energetic about what I get to do with GrowLeader. I love helping other churches. I love getting involved in those types of things. So I'm never going to retire. I mean, I really don't have rocking chairs in my future.
That's great.
It's not even in my theology.
Yeah.
I don't really want to do that. But I knew I was going to lead the church to a certain point, and I've always believed the younger generation would need to lead it, and I'll participate in that process. So about 20 years ago, I started thinking, I had about 12 people on my list, Matt, of people that I thought I probably should spend the time now developing in case they are the one. And my own sons were in it, by the way. It was about 6 or 7 years ago that I had all of my sons, my biological sons, I'm talking about, in the room together. And I said, "Hey, if you want to be considered, now's a good time to tell me because I'm getting more and more serious about this." This was like 7 years ago.
Yep.
And to a person, I don't know what this says about my job, but to a person, my son said, "No, Dad, we don't want to do what you've been doing. We all want to be involved," and they all are involved in some kind of ministry, either in Highlands or out on their own. All of my kids are doing some form of ministry, but I gave them that chance, and asked several times in case they changed their mind along the way. But I've been developing spiritual sons my whole life. And if you think about it, we've been doing it in the church in this grand scale with Dream Team. I do it with the staff. I do it with campus pastors.
Yep.
I do it with a group of pastors that I call the pastors that I pastor, the pips, I call them,
Yep.
PC and the pips. And so I have about 40 of those guys that I love mentoring. I mean, so there was a lot of people, that were in my mind and my heart that I was developing. And I knew God would select someone. And in fact, I can tell some stories right now that, talk about satisfying curiosity. I could tell some stories right now that no one knows. You don't even know
I'd love to hear him.
that became confirmation for me that Mark was the one.
Right.
One of those was that he became one of the greatest vision carriers. If I was thinking it, saying it, and wanting to do it, and this is not putting anybody else down. Everybody did it well. He just did it exceptionally well.
Right.
He carried that vision and that message. And Highlands College is a perfect example of that. The Motion Conference and the Motion Movement, I call it, is a perfect example of that. But so I started involving him more in Sundays, starting with 4 Sundays a year, moving up to 8 Sundays a year. In 2024, he did 12 or 15 Sundays speaking, and just did a remarkable job. And here's something nobody knows. And I saw the outcomes, which we love outcomes. We don't just have church for church's sake.
Can you explain what outcomes are just for the person?
Yeah,
that's
what I mean
listening?
by that is that we have things that we think matter. And that is people getting saved, people getting pastored, people being discipled, people being mobilized. We believe those things actually matter, so we measure them. They are outcomes. They let us know if ministry that we're doing actually works. And so we modify based on outcomes. If the outcomes are high, we don't touch it. We ride that because we must be doing something that God is blessing and actually works.
Yep.
Like the number of people that are getting their life to Jesus.
Yep.
That matters to
You
us.
measure what matters.
We measure what matters, and it's not output. Most people only think about output, and output is another Sunday's coming, so let's sing 4 more songs and have a sermon. That's output.
Yeah,
Outputs, don't focus on output, focus on outcomes. You want the results and track the results to know if you're getting some things right or not. And one of the most important outcomes is souls. And people don't know this, that I was watching this, Matt, that when Mark preached, more people were getting saved than the Sundays I was preaching.
Wow.
And I consider myself pretty good, if I could say this in a way that doesn't sound not humble, but I know how to lead people to Jesus.
Yep.
I know how to present the gospel in a way. So this is not something I feel like, I'm bad at. I feel like I'm pretty good at explaining the gospel and leading people to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. And I was watching these Sundays where he was speaking exceed. And it didn't insult me and it didn't hurt my feelings. It blessed me. I thought,
awesome.
look at what God's doing. We had a couple of situations that they weren't major crises or anything, but they were in our world, it felt like a crisis, something that a problem we had to solve. And it was times where I felt fearful, not really fearful. I just didn't want to have to deal with it. It was discouraging to me.
They were a burden.
It really was. And I wasn't energized by the problem. I was like, what are we going to have to do to fix this, man? And I was almost like bummed. And I saw Mark
gets fired up.
I mean, in fact, on one of them, he goes, look, I got this. I'll call you every evening and report to you how it's going. And I thought, now why is God giving him that ability right now? And that really spoke to me. There was something that happened in the fall of 23 that Mark just like, I got this. And I'm like, bro, why does he have so much energy for this right now?
So is energy an indicator though for somebody who's out there now who thinks, man, you're creating energy, it's not natural?
Because I think it takes grace to do ministry.
That's great.
And when you have it, it doesn't feel like work anymore. I truly believe that. I had a missionary friend I grew up with, and I'm not really cut out for missions. I love missions. I support missions. Right. We fund missions. But when I'm on the mission field, I'm counting down the days I can get back to America. Like, I don't like the food. I don't like the weather. I don't like having to go through translators. And this guy, every time he was doing that, it looked like he was at Disney World. He was having so much fun hiking mountains for 4 hours to go preach to 10 people.
So good.
Like, you hike for 4 hours to go preach to 10 people? Oh, yeah, man, there's so much. Like, it wasn't fun for me. That's grace. Mm-hmm. It takes rose-colored glasses. It takes the grace of God to do ministry. And it takes grace to handle crises. It takes grace to handle staff. And I was watching the grace maybe lift off of me in some areas. it probably was happening because he puts grace for other things. I have a grace on my life right now to build this school. I really feel it. I see buildings, I see places where I want to go present the vision to people that I think can become investors in our college. And that I was watching this grace get on Mark's life. So I had these confirmations all along the way, as far back as the fall of 23. So
I remember a conversation. Caleb Chambers, who's our Shoals campus pastor, and you and I were in a car together, and Caleb said, "Hey, I felt called to this city." He was telling you which city, and you said he was at another campus, and you said to him, "Well, Caleb, if God's calling you there, then He's calling someone else to take your spot.
right.
But you can't move until you help identify who it is that God's calling to take your spot."
That's very good. And it is true because that's why we call it a transition of roles. I knew I could not budge until God had raised up someone else who was waking up every day with an idea for the church, who had passion, and then on top of that had the grace to handle the tough days. And I don't care what you're doing, what assignment you get from God, there are going to be days where it's tough. And when God's graced you to do it, it's still tough, but you feel like, man, I've got this. And when he said that, I just knew it. And so there were these confirmations all along the way. So in the fall of 24, if people really want to know how it really happened, I first talked to our staff elders. We call them the lead team. And I brought them into an all-day retreat. And I just said, listen, I think the time has come. And I even have an idea of when we should do it, but I won't do anything without your 100% agreement. And we had a 4-hour discussion about not only it happening itself, but when. So it wasn't just Mark, it wasn't just the who, but it was when it should happen. And to a person, they all agreed in how we ended up doing this. So I next went to our non-staff elders, our trustees, and I said the same thing. I said, at any point along this journey, anybody who disagrees, I'm going to table it until I get 100% agreement, because I'm not going to do something outside of the covering of our government and our elders of our church. And so to a person, our board of trustees, which are the non-staff elders, said, it's now not only the who is right, but also the when. And by the way, Mark had already been in every trustee meeting that I had, even though he had no role to be there.
Right.
So they knew over a year ago. He's been in the last 12 trustee meetings, learning, and they knew who, they did not know when, but to a person they said, the time is right, the time is now. And then did that as well to our overseers, and to a person they all said, man, it's God, it's time. In fact, I didn't even invite the overseers to come to the day we did this on their own. They said, we want to be there, we want to lay hands on Mark, we want to honor this moment. So a lot went into this, and I'm very, very thrilled about it. And then finally, Matt, right around Christmas time, I sat down with my kids. And again, it's no surprise, but we already had tons of conversation. And I said, any one of you, Tammy, any one of you kids, my precious daughters-in-law and son-in-law, said, any one of you guys think, man, there's just something doesn't feel right, I'm going to slow it down until everybody feels right. Because my kids are the founding pastors of this church too. I mean, they went through this. They've shouldered the burden of this, and the blessing, by the way.
That's right.
And by the way, let me just, on the record, the blessing has far outweighed the burden. So you'll never hear any complaints from any of us. But to a person, they were all in agreement. So that's what's happened. Again, I would clearly say not retiring. I don't know. Oh, the funniest one, we didn't even mention this. I can't believe we forgot.
This is the good one.
About a week afterwards, got a text from someone in our church who's in state government. I won't say whose name it is, but they're in state government. And they texted me and said, hey, I'm texting you on behalf of another person who's in state government. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but they said, are the rumors true that you're running for governor of Alabama? And I texted him back and said, I didn't even know there was a governor's race. And so I said, no, please tell this person my name is not in that hat. That's the last job I want. I give honor to it, but I have no grace for that for sure.
So just for clarity, Chris Hodges is not going to go into politics. Chris Hodges is not retiring. I've watched you. You have a church planner's energy right now.
Yeah.
But with a founding pastor's wisdom, which is awesome.
Well, thank you. And and I just I want everybody to hear this. What I said on that Sunday is exactly what's happening and nothing more. There's nothing else going on.
So this could be a tough question.
All right.
What do you hope Highlands is doing in 50 years? What do you hope it looks like?
Well, I hope missionally the exact same thing.
Great.
Because I don't think the know God, find freedom, discover purpose, make a difference is mine. I think it's God's.
Great.
I think it's the Great Commission. I think we should be a church that's evangelistic, reaching lost people, pastoring people as well as we possibly can, discipling people specifically in their spiritual gift so that the whole church can be mobilized to make a difference. I truly believe that's what all local churches, honestly, is my hope in 50 years, that they're all doing that. And so how it looks, though, culturally is going to change because cultures change, seasons change. How you lead somebody to Jesus, it may look differently, right? There was a season where God was blessing crusades. There was a time when passing out tracts would win people to the Lord. How it happens, the vehicle that the message, that never changes, by the way. Methods change. Message never changes. Jesus will always be the only way to heaven. But how that happens, I think, is in the hands of the generation that's living in it.
It's great.
Which is why I'm so excited to have a 43-year-old, with a family that he's raising that are in junior high and high school, can speak into the life of our church and be the lead pastor. And so I'm fired up about it.
I can't wait for the future. We're going to have Pastor Mark on and get to have both sides of the story in a future episode. So grateful for you. There's a quote by your father-in-law. We have it on the wall upstairs. It says, "My greatest successes are someone else's."
Yep.
And I love that you're walking that out. It's been fun to watch the way you've led through this. And there's a big to-do list. Chris Hodges has a big to-do list on stuff we want to get done for the college and for other pastors.
It's exciting. And you mark my words, everybody that's listening, you watch what happens in this university over the next 8 years. I'll be 62 in a couple of months. I have at least 8 to 18 years left in me to pour into this college and build it as one of the greatest ministry leadership universities in the world. And at the same time, hoping to give what we're learning away to other universities, because we don't need one, we need 100 of them at least to raise up the number of workers that are needed right now in the harvest field far exceeds the opportunities that are in front of us right now. The harvest is plentiful. It's never been more plentiful. And the laborers have never been more few. And we've got to, I think it's the greatest problem in the world to solve is the lack of workers into that harvest field. And I pledge on this podcast that I will give the rest of my life to getting as many workers into that harvest field. And that's where Grow has a place in that. I'm going to give the lion's share to Highlands College.
Yep.
But I'm involved with Grow because I want to help churches. I don't want to help pastors. I want to help you with your succession and transition. I want to help you with your fundraising and building buildings and doing all that we can to get the church healthy and strong, and then raising up the leaders that are needed for the harvest field. I pledge my life to that for as long as God will give me breath and energy, and I'm going to enjoy it along the way.
I think my only response is let's go.
Let's go.
Let's get after it. If you have any questions about anything you've heard today, any way that we can help you, we do want to resource you. Please email us at info@growleader.com. I'm in the best of both worlds. I love my founding pastor, and I'm fired up about my lead pastor. So excited about Pastor Mark and all that's going to happen at Highlands. Love that you're with us today. We'll see you next time on the GrowLeader podcast. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and also a big thank you to all of our partners that help make the GrowLeader podcast happen. For over 80 years, Wesleyan Investment Foundation has helped churches with their borrowing and investing needs. And whether you're dreaming of new opportunities or seeking wise resource management, we think WIF can help you. You can learn more about them at wifonline.com/growleader. For over 30 years, One Hope has partnered with churches and ministries to impact the lives of children and youth with the message of the gospel of Christ. Through collaboration with local communities worldwide, One Hope has reached over 2 billion young people in 112 countries. Discover how you could partner with them at onehope.net/growleader. If you're looking for ways to know your people better and also grow your church at the same time, you need to know about Studio C. Studio C combines strategy, technology, and communications to maximize church member engagement. You can bridge the engagement gap and transform your church's impact with Studio C, and you can learn more about them at thestudioc.org/growleader.